Well, Psylocke came a lot sooner than I was expecting a new Marvel Champions announcement. Hello and welcome to Nelson All Over Cars. Today we're going to take a look at Psylocke, who was announced last week, and this video is coming out a little bit later than I would have expected, but late is better than never, I guess. Last week I was at a convention called the Gamma Expo that's over in Reno, Nevada, and so when I saw that this got posted, I was super excited. I got to read a lot, but was not in a situation where I could record. So if you want to hear more about that convention, about the cool new games that I saw there, you can check out my other channel. I'm going to link the video right up here in the corner. You can check that out. Anyways, let's talk about Psylocke, because Psylocke looks really freaking cool. She's coming in September, and I'm pumped to talk about it. So on her alter ego side, Psylocke has that 6 hand size, 3 recovery and 10 hit points, fairly standard. She has a setup ability that states to get her 2 Psi energy upgrades and put them into play. They're a really cool part of her kit, and we're going to talk about that for a second. While she's in alter ego, she has the ability to exhaust those one at a time to shuffle a psionic card from your discard pile back into your deck, allowing you in consistency of draw. So Psylocke is a psionic hero. She's coming with some psionic cards, as well as we have the old psionic cards that came with Phoenix, and then I'm guessing we're probably going to get some more psionic cards with Cable as well as hers. So this is going to have a lot of targets, and I'm pretty excited about that, and a couple of more psionic things that are coming in her pack that we'll talk about in a second, but I'm hopeful for the psionic trait here in the future. When you flip her card over to the hero side, she has a base 1/1/2 stat with a hand size of 4, which seems really low, but I don't think it's going to be a problem just because of those upgrades that I keep not talking about. Those are going to help a lot, but one more thing and then we'll talk about them. Her Psi energy control ability allows you to interrupt a basic activation, so attack, thwart, or defend, and you can flip a Psi energy upgrade, so knife to katana or katana to knife. Finally, let's just talk about them now. So these are the double-sided cards. On one side we have the Psi-Knife, and on the other side we have the Psi-Katana. And these are going to modify her abilities as well as they are resource generators, which so freaking cool. 2 resource generators on the table at the start is a huge boost, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. But the Psi-Knife gives Psylocke a +1 thwart, and so that could push you at a 3/1/2 if you have both of your upgrades on the Psi-Knife side. And then it also allows you to exhaust it to generate a mental resource, and then you are able to flip the card if you want. So you can exhaust, generate the mental, flip it over to the katana. It's kind of up to you. And remember, you can also flip these by using basic activations, so one at a time. So there's a lot of control that is going to be going into Psylocke, which makes her a really flexible and a really interesting hero. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the flexibility when we get to her cards, but she is going to be, I think, a very strong solo hero. When it flips over, the knife flips over, it flips to the Psi-Katana side. This gives her a +1 attack and gives her a basic attacks piercing, which is really cool now because we're seeing a lot of minions and villains that are coming in with those tough status cards. And so having piercing on a basic attack seems really strong, especially if we have 2 Psi-Katanas. Our stat line is now a 1/3/2, and so a 3 attack with piercing is pretty insane and pretty incredible. Similar to the knife, you can exhaust the katana to generate a physical resource, and then you can flip the card. This one is restricted. The katana is restricted, which is a little strange. So if you have 2 katanas out, you can't play another restricted card. I'm probably not going to be running restricted cards in her deck, but like if I had a hand cannon, I could have a Psi-Katana and a Psi-Knife because the knife is not restricted. I don't know. There may be something fun with that. But who knows? I just thought that was a little weird. All of those, without even ever looking at our cards, I think I'm going to really enjoy Psylocke because it's going to be a puzzle. You can flex into what you or your team needs, meaning that I think that she's going to be a strong solo hero because of flexibility. Flexibility in solo is key. You have to do everything, and she's going to be able to do that. You can flip her into a 3/1/2, a 1/3/2, or a 2/2/2. All of those, a 2/2/2 stat line is incredible. We consider that a really good stat line for a flexible hero, and the fact that you can change it and shift that to a 3/1/2 or a 1/3/2 makes her really interesting. I am so excited for the flexibility and the puzzle that this provides, and then allowing you to figure out what resource generators you need in order to either get rid of those villain attachments, hit the kickers for those drop kicks, or whatever. But let's talk about her cards, because all of her cards actually play off of how many katana, or well, most of her cards, I should say, play off how many knives or katanas she has in play. So like her attack card, it's called Fury of Blades. It's a 3-cost attack, and it deals 2 damage to an enemy. And then for each Psi-Knife you control, you can choose an enemy and confuse it, or each katana you control, deal 2 damage to an enemy that's chosen. This is really flexible. One, we're getting confused, which is very, very powerful, especially in solo. And if you have the ability to confuse the villain, it gives you that flexibility to roll down, heal, take advantage of her 6 hand size instead of her 4, and that's one of the weaknesses of Psylocke, is that 4 hand size, but being able to confuse with a lot of her kit actually means that you're going to be able to go down and take advantage of that 6 hand size. But what's really cool is you don't have to choose the same enemy. So you can spend 3. If you have 2 katanas out, you can do 2-2-2, or you can do 2-2-2 to 1 target. Or if you have a Psi-Knife and a katana out, it's 4 damage to the villain and confuse it, 4 damage to a minion, confuse the villain. There's just a lot of flexibility, and it feels like on average, if you're going with just the damage, you're overpaying, right? We always kind of think about swinging web kick at 3 for 8. However, the flexibility does come at a cost, and that cost at this point is 2 damage, where you can split it up between 3. And so now we're comparing this to like a Dance of Death from Black Widow. So it's a 3-1-2-3. This one's a 2-2-2, or confused. This is a really good card. I'm very pumped about this card with those confused. Her thwart card is called Mental Detection and follows kind of the same formula as Fury of Blades. It's a 2-cost card. Remove 1 threat. For each knife you control, you get 2 more threat mitigation. And for each katana you have, you get to draw a card. Now this is pretty fun. If you split the weapons, 1 knife and 1 katana, which is probably where I think I'm going to be living the majority of my games in, is 1 knife, 1 katana. You get 3 threat removal and a card draw, which is really, really strong for just 2 cost or 3 effective cost. Especially in solo, when 5 threat can really be overkill. If you have 2 of those knives out there, 5 threat for 2 cost is good ratio, but how much threat mitigation do you really need? And so the ability to flex that into, okay, I'm actually just gonna spend 2 and remove 3 threat, which clears the main and discounts and draws me a card. That's going to be some really procedural thinking, and I'm very happy. Her defense card is called Psionic Redirect. It's a 2-cost defense card that states when you take any amount of damage, you get to prevent 2 of that damage. For each katana you control, prevent 2 more of that damage, and for each knife, confuse an enemy. Again, more confused. So as a solo player, this is pretty exciting for me. Like I was saying with the thwart card, I'm probably going to be keeping 1 knife and 1 katana the entire game, with maybe switching over to do a big attack and then switching back over. And that's the procedure that's going to be really fun to try and figure out, right? If you have a Psi-Knife and a Psi-Katana and you want your big attack, you can exhaust the knife, generate a resource, then flip it to a katana. So now you have 3 attack. You can swing and then flip the other one back to a knife, so you can maintain the balance, perfectly balanced, as all things should be, right? You can maintain that balance and then get the kind of the best of really both worlds, or you can flex into what you need. And I feel like I'm just like beating a dead horse at this point, but flexibility is so good, and that's why I think Psylocke is going to be one of the top tier solo heroes, because she has so much flexibility. She's gonna be able to flex into exactly what she wants. So yeah, if you have a big attack coming, keep the katanas out, prevent 6. If you want to confuse, I mean, there's just a lot. There's a lot of really cool stuff coming in this. She has an upgrade called Psionic Training. This is a 1-cost upgrade that has a passive benefit to ignore the guard and control keywords. That in itself can be really strong, and you can just leave it out all game if you want. I mean, it's a very cheap upgrade to get in play. It's a good target for caught off guard, but also you can just ignore guard and patrol. So if you're facing off someone like Master Mold, where all the minions, or mostly all the Sentinel minions at least, have the guard ability, you can just ignore that the entire game. But if you want, and this is not a forced response, which I think makes this really strong, after you thwart, you can confuse an enemy. And so you can sit that out there, you can get rid of all the armored guards in front of Claw. Once all of them are out, you thwart, and then you can confuse Claw, allowing you to roll down, take advantage of that 6 hand size. Flexible, confused machine. Psylocke is going to be fun. She has another upgrade called Weapons Training. This one is a 2-cost upgrade. It gives you Retaliate 1. And then after you attack, you can discard the card to ready each weapon upgrade you control. And so this is interesting because it gives you back your resource generators, right? So if you use them for your resource generators, you can stand them back up and then you have 2 more resource generators. Or if you're running additional weapons, like if you have that hand cannon out and you're just not running with ever 2 katanas, then you get to ready the hand cannon. You probably don't need the ready of the hand cannon because you're probably exhausted because you use the hand. Regardless, whatever. Sonic rifle, you could ready the sonic rifle and then use the sonic rifle again. So there are a couple of options that this could be cool, but getting that ready, fixing that, you're basically getting your cards back because it's a 2-cost card, so effective resources of 3. But then you can discard it to get 2 resources back. And so you're getting Retaliate 1 for 1 effective resource, kind of, with like 2 postponed to later. Again, this is not a forced response, so you can choose when you can use this. So if you have a really low costed hand, you don't have to use this until you get that higher cost hand size. Her signature ally is Angel, which has led to a lot of speculation that we're going to be getting Angel at the same time as Psylocke, and so we may be getting to do another one of these videos pretty soon. But Angel is a 3-cost ally with a 1-2-3 stat line that allows you to ready when you play him from your hand. This is not super flashy as an ally, but since you can get up to that 3 attack or thwart based on your Psi-Knives or Katanas, he can provide some really awesome value. So you can attack, play him, attack with Psylocke again, and right there that's 8 damage, which in solo is a significant chunk. So he's cool. He's not flashy, but he's cool. I think the joy of Psylocke is going to come in the other cards, and then we have Angel, who is just going to help with those basic activations. Those are the Psylocke cards we've seen now. She looks really fun, really awesome, incredible flexibility. She has that confused inner kit. She's going to be a confused lock machine. We're getting more confused cards, so we're expanding on that archetype Injustice. We're going to talk about those here in a second. And so her ability to confuse is going to be really cool, except if you're running against stalwart villains. But I do think that she's going to be better against stalwart villains than like Miles is, because you have the ability to adjust your playstyle and you'll be fine. And so don't run the confuse. If you have the option to confuse, like with the knives with your defense event, just keep them in katanas and then prevent all the damage. And so it's going to take a little bit of procedural decision making in order to make sure that you can optimize. She's not going to be as good against stalwart villains, but a lot of characters aren't as good against stalwart villains. But I don't think she's going to be as hindered as much as I thought she would be right there when I initially read the article. Let's talk about the Justice Precon. So the Justice Precon is coming with some really cool new cards, like Captain Britain, who is a 4-cost ally with a 3-3-3 stat line, 2 consequentials on both activations. However, he takes 1 less damage if attacking a minion or thwarting a side scheme. So this is going to be pretty sweet solo, right? Because a 3 attack, 3 thwart, especially that 3 thwart, that's going to be able to clear a lot of your side schemes. And then also, one way or another, with this card and like a chance encounter to go grab him is going to be a really cool engine and drawing into him, or if you already have him out and you can trigger that again to grab another ally. I just think he's going to be really versatile and can work with he can work really well with a lot of the cards we already have. I've seen it mentioned online a couple of times that Command Center with him is going to be really fun. So whenever an ally defeats a side scheme, deal 2 damage to an enemy. And so now we're getting a really cool build around some of these cool new allies. And so I'm excited for Captain Britain, and it's going to be really fun if you are playing multiplayer and you can have some friends at the table. Maybe you have like a leadership buddy who can throw like a reinforced suit in there to get him multiple activations, or heal him with a med team just so he can get some major work. What we'll probably want to do is keep him on the table for as long as we can and let him deal with kind of the minion and the side scheme control, and then you can focus on dealing damage to the villain as well as maintaining that main scheme. And I think he's gonna be pretty good. He's gonna be interesting. I'm excited to try him in a couple of decks. The other Justice ally that we got is Cypher, one of the very few 2-cost allies that we have in Justice now. He's a 1-1-2 stat line, but after he attacks and damages a confused enemy, you get to draw a card. So with Psylocke's kit and some of the new cards that we're going to talk about here soon, we have a lot of confuse built in. And so for that confused lock archetype that we talked about in the Justice archetype video, this is going to be really interesting because attack, get that card draw, and all of a sudden that 2 cost goes down to a 1 cost, attacks again, it's a 1 effective cost, it's just the card. But he's going to have a lot of targets, and it's just going to be a nice way to get that card draw engine going in Justice. So mediocre stat line, 2 cost allies. Can they have a mediocre stat line? Honestly, like the 2 cost allies seem very, very strong. Now we have a 2 cost ally that can fuel a card draw engine. Seems pretty good. Upside the Head is probably, from what I've seen, one of the most talked about cards that has been revealed. I guess it's not spoiled because it's published at this point. But this is a really interesting card, especially for solo. So it's a 1 cost event that says after your hero makes a basic attack and damages an enemy, confuse that enemy. But if they already confused, stun it instead. This is very strong. So the only downside here is if you are exhausted, you don't have the way to make a basic attack. Psylocke is a little bit of an exception because Angel can ready her up, or if the villain has tough, again, Psylocke is a little bit of an exception because we have piercing with Psylocke. This is going to be really good in Psylocke's deck, but there are chances that this can't trigger, and that's something that we need to be cognizant about, and maybe just something that we're thinking about when we're going against a specific villain. If there's a villain out there that exhausts you a lot or has a ton of tough status cards, this one could be a little bit harder to play, but I think we can get around a lot of those issues very quickly because of the benefit, especially in solo, because in multiplayer, sometimes, or a lot of the time, the Justice player is focusing on their basic activation to remove threat. And their entire goal is to mitigate threat at the table. Now, there is going to be times where you have to flex in and help. But on the other hand, for solo, a lot of the times you're using the Justice cards to mitigate the threat. And then you're using your hero's basic activation as well as some of their attack cards to deal damage. So if you have someone like Hulk, right? So Hulk doesn't really thwart. He has that 0 thwart. So he's relying on the Justice cards to do the thwarting, and then he is attacking. And so when he's attacking, you can now use this card to confuse, or if they're already confused, to stun. So I think it's a really, really, really strong solo card, and something that will kind of be hard to not place in my decks. Now, if this, yeah, it's good. It's really good. Yeah, in solo, this is really good. Yep. We're going to be running a lot of that. The card I am most excited about is Float Like a Butterfly. This card, if it didn't create a new archetype, it expanded immensely on one. What it does is whenever a character you control attacks a confused enemy, increase that damage by 1. So in solo, this works if you're running a confused build like Psylocke. She's going to like this card. She has a lot of confused in her kit. Excellent. Miles likes this card, a lot of confused in his kits. But there are going to be situations where maybe, I'm trying to think, like She-Hulk doesn't have a lot of confuse, right? You would have to build around using the other Justice cards to confuse. But if you are playing multiplayer, you can throw this under any ally's control or any player's control. Pass 3 of these out, hit them with the confuse. If you can confuse with an action card, then, or like a sonic rifle, you can confuse before every player takes their turn. Every single attack that a player makes that has Float Like a Butterfly is increased by 1, and that's for any character. So my audio got all weird and crackly and strange, so we're just going to be re-recording all of the last part of this video, which is fine because I am still really excited to talk about it. So here we are. So we were talking about Float Like a Butterfly and the fact that every instance of damage, or I'm sorry, every character that attacks gets +1 against a confused enemy. Talking about passing these out in a multiplayer game so that if you are able to confuse and you have 3 Float Like a Butterflies out there, every single character that is attacking the villain gets +1 damage. So in a solo setting, if you and 3 of your allies are attacking, that's +4 damage for a 2-cost upgrade. That is very significant, especially if you're leaning into that confused lock build. And it's not even considering the fact that there can be multiple activations. So for like allies, if you have command team and you're able to ready up and make multiple attacks against that confused villain with those allies, or if your hero has multiple activations like a Quicksilver or a Captain America, Gambit with his Royal Flush, all of these kind of instances of multiple iterations of damage is going to be so cool and just so very powerful with this archetype. This is one of those cards that, and I don't play a lot of multiplayer, so I may be completely off on this, but this is one of those cards where I feel like you want to be running a lot of these upgrades. So when I'm thinking about like upgrades that are max 1 per player, typically I default to 1 in my multiplayer games. I default to 1, and I'm going to be playing that on me. This very well could be one of those cards that you bring 3x and pass it out to all the other characters because you are not working on damage. You're working on the confuse, you're working on the threat mitigation, pass out to everyone else who's attacking, and you never touch it. And so I'm so excited for this card. I think it's going to be a really interesting card to just kind of push the meta for some of these different archetypes, especially that confuse archetype and how it interacts with the aggression player. I am so pumped. We got a new player side scheme called Lay the Trap. Cable loves it. Cable's getting even stronger, so yeah, let's go. So Lay the Trap is a 1-cost card player side scheme, so it goes into play, and once you thwart down the side scheme, then you get the effect. Now, in a 1 or 2 player game, you can have 1 player side scheme out at a time. 3 or 4, it's 2. And this one brings some damage to Justice aspect. So it takes what you are good at, Justice is good at removing threats, and converts that into damage. So whenever you thwart down the 3 threat per player on this side scheme, you get to deal 5 damage per player to the villain. So solo 3 for 5, pretty nice. Also because it runs into that synergy that Justice has with side schemes, with chance encounters, skilled investigators, all of these pieces that combo off of killing side schemes. You get even more benefit when you're running these player side schemes. So now Lay the Trap in a solo player or in a solo game, 3 threat for 5 damage. I will take that any day of the week. When you look at multiplayer, it gets even crazier, especially because you can kind of keep this right there at that last threat. 4-player game, 12 threat for 20 damage. Now, you don't have to do all 12 of that thwart in 1 turn. What you can do is you can sit it down and leave it with like 1 threat on it. Wait for that, maybe that turn, that villain flip into stage 2 or 3, and then thwart it down to deal 20 damage to the villain. That is significant. We don't have a lot of cards. There are some, but we don't have a lot of cards where you can strategically time damage over the course of multiple turns. A lot of the times in Marvel Champions, what it is you're drawing into cards that you have to play at that specific time that will then deal damage. Now, here, we have kind of, I think of this almost as like the energy channel for Justice. We have built up damage, and we can trigger it with 1 thwart activation, whether that's an ally or whatever, but it's like, that's a lot of damage. I feel like I just quoted an infomercial there, but this is going to bring a lot of damage to the table, and it's going to be timed damage, and you can control that timing, making it a very, very powerful card. The last Justice card that we saw in the article is a reprint of Concussive Blow, more confused. Psylocke's going to love it, but we're not going to talk about it too much. Let's talk about the gray cards. So there were 2 gray cards that were shown in the article. Both of them I am so on. We have Power of the Mind. It's a really interesting card. I'm not sure how much I love it though. So Power of the Mind is a resource card. It's a 1 mental resource, but you double the amount of resource the card generates when you're paying for a psionic card. I love the design space that this opens up. However, I am not 100% sure how often I'm going to run this. So we don't know how many of each card Psylocke is going to have. So instead, let's look at one of our psionic heroes that we do know, and that's Phoenix. So using Phoenix as an example, what's nice about the Power of the Mind is that unlike the Power of Aggression, Justice, all of us, you can use these on any type of card that is psionic traded. That could be aspect card, that could be basic card, which we have here in a second, and then that could also be your hero card. So it is very, very flexible, and Phoenix herself has 9 cards that are psionic traded that cost 2 or more, giving this 9 targets just in her base kit that this could work on, which sounds great because when we did our resources video with Villain Theory, we were talking about how we kind of went 10 targets for these power of cards. Now, it is a little bit different math because you're allowed to run 3 of these and not just 2 of these like you are limited in with like the power of aggression. You can only run 2 power of aggressions. However, you can run 3 of these. So the math is slightly different. I just haven't thought through that 100%. I don't know what the implications are of that. But what has me concerned is that even though we have plenty of targets for it, we will easily be able to hit those 10 targets, especially in Phoenix, who already has a fairly high cost curve kit. What's concerning for me, or what gives me hesitation, is team building exercise. So team building exercise is a 2-cost upgrade that says you can exhaust it to discount a card that shares the same trait with your hero by 1. That means that all these psionic cards, when you're playing them with psionic heroes, you can discount those costs. So if you look at that, to get the full power out of Power of the Mind, or the full utilization out of Power of the Mind, you need something that costs 3 or more, bringing Phoenix's target cards down to 3, because I want to be utilizing my team building exercises before I use my Power of the Mind. Now, there are a couple of caveats here, and I talked to Villain Theory about this. It was just because I thought I was a little bit crazy, and I still think I am. I think I'm blowing this way out of proportion, but he talked me down a little bit, so I appreciate that. But Villain pointed out that it can be also used to pay for psionic allies, which is a really good utilization. Team building exercise can as well. But also the big thing here is if you're running the psionic heroes and you're running like Phoenix with 9 out of her 40 cards without putting any more psionic cards into her deck, which you probably will be because they're fairly strong, you probably will have multiple psionic cards in your hand. So you can team building exercise that first card, Power of the Mind the second card, or vice versa. You can also use team building exercise for your X-Men or X-Force allies, so it has a little bit more utilization outside of just these psionic cards. That being said, I think it's going to be a lot better for Phoenix, who has the 5 hand size, than it is going to be with Psylocke, who only has the 4 hand size. Now, Psylocke has the Confuse ability to flip down and take advantage of her 6 hand size, increasing the likelihood that she's going to be drawing into a target for Power of the Mind as well as Power of the Mind. However, with a 4 hand size, and we talked about this a little bit in the resources video, which I already referenced, a lower hand size hero probably is not running as many resource cards because the likelihood of drawing a target and that card in the same hand is lower than in a 5 or a 6 hand size hero. So that being said, I think I'm going to be leaning into team building exercise with Psylocke and maybe experimenting around with the Power of the Mind a little bit more with Phoenix. Or Cable, I guess. I guess we don't really know exactly what Cable looks like with the Psionic. I think Phoenix is going to get the most bang for her buck with this Power of the Mind. But Psylocke, I'm going to be a little cautious. I'm going to try it. I'm definitely going to be running this card in Psylocke just to see, because like this game, so much of it can be speculation, and until you actually put cards onto the table, you don't actually... There's a lot of times where you can run into consequences or benefits that you could not see beforehand. So I'm going to try it. I am a little bit more cautious than I think the entire community is. I think and maybe that's just me coming off of the video with Villain Theory and like this enlightenment of how to utilize resource cards. And I'm just like, okay, now I'm thinking about it in a sense of, I need a target to pay for it, but I also want to get maximum benefit out of it, and I'm not getting maximum benefit if I'm also running team building exercise. If no, I feel like team building exercise is the better way to run. All of that being said, let me know what you think, because I think I'm a little crazy here, and I think it's a really cool card. I'm very excited for what this brings to the table, right? If you have the power of Aerial, now, I mean, same thing, like you're going to have the same issues with power of Aerial as you would with team building exercise in this, but we have now precedent that we could get some of these power of trait cards, and that to me is really freaking cool. I am thrilled that this card is being printed because of the implications of what it does to the design space. But let me know what your thoughts are on Power of the Mind. Do you think that it's going to be a good card? Is it a card that you're going to be running, especially over like the power of aggression or whatever? Let me know, because I'm curious. It's going to be, I think, a fun card that will mess with the meta a little bit. And then the last card that we got is Telepathy. This is a 1-cost upgrade that allows you to spend 2 mental resources for 2 threat removal. So this the way that the article wrote it, and I think there's still a little bit of ambiguity on whether or not Power of the Mind can pay for telepathy. The way the article stated, it looks like it could, and I think it can just based off the wording. Regardless, I don't really like this card. However, it does provide a sync for Power of the Mind. So if I'm running Power of the Mind in like a Psylocke deck, I probably will be running telepathy just because it's a sync. So if I draw into something that team building exercise can discount and I don't have a good target for Power of the Mind, I can sync it into telepathy, allowing me to remove 2 threat. Now, in Justice, I'm not really running this, right? I have a lot of threat mitigation in Justice as a solo player already, but in Protection or in Aggression, I could see myself running this a little bit more. That being said, I don't love the payoff. It's a 4 effective cost for 2 threat removal the first turn you play it. The card, 1 cost, and then 2 mental resources. 4 resources for 2 threat is not good. Now, after it's on the table and you get 2 resources for 2 threat removal, we're talking a little bit better, especially since it's a sync and it's something that we can iterate on multiple times. They have to be mental resources, which is also pretty tough. I don't know, it seems expensive. Now, there has been speculation that there may be another card that combos fairly well with this one, so I will reserve judgment until we see the entire card pool that is being printed. But right now, outside of maybe Psylocke in like a protection build, I don't think I'm running this card. I just don't think that the payoff is worth the cost. Yeah, it's a high cost for a mediocre payoff, and I can find other ways to mitigate threat. Overall thoughts on the entire article and release, I am very excited. I am really happy with the design space of this game. I think that we're getting a lot of really cool, powerful, but not overpowered heroes. The 2 resource generators on the table that Psylocke is going to start out with a 4 hand size is something that we saw kind of with SPDR, and how that plays. And she's going to have a lot of times where she's going to have minimal options in her hand, but she's going to be able to pay for those options. And I just think that thinking about the cost curve, all of that stuff, I think she's going to be really cool. I do hope that we get to see some more psionic aspect cards. I hope those come in the back of her pack, because that's going to really help out Phoenix and Cable, and just building around that trait I think will be a lot of fun and really interesting, because right now we have 1 psionic card in each aspect. So I'm hoping that we can start building a little bit more, and so that whenever I'm running Phoenix in Aggression, I have more Aggression psionic options, which gives me more targets for like Power of the Mind and stuff. She does feel like she's going to be a very, very strong solo hero, with the flexibility that comes with her being able to manipulate her stat line, going from a 2-2-2, a 3-1-2, or a 1-3-2, wherever she needs to be. If she needs to be removing threat, she can do that. If she needs to be dealing damage, she can do that. Or she can sit there at that 2-2-2 stat line and be consistent the entire game until maybe that game in push where you flip over to the katanas and start swinging for a significant amount of damage. That being said, I think she'll also be a really good team hero because she can lean into the role that the team needs. So if she is going to be that threat mitigator, she's going to be the justice player at the table, she can sit with her knives on the table and be thwarting for 3 the entire game. Heroic Intuition takes that up to a 4. A 4 thwart hero is strong. It's probably overkill in solo, but it just gives you the flexibility if you are running her in a team versus solo. I think she's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to see where she goes and how she fits in with the rest of the Marvel champions that we have. The last thing that I will say is I think she's going to be most fun in Aggression. I am very much looking forward to her Aggression build because we have multiple instances of damage with her Fury of Blades, and then comboing that off with the aggressive energies, the warrior skills, and all of the things that you can do to increase the iterations of damage that we have in red. And then she has the resource generators on the table, so you can run her on the katana side, huge amounts of damage, and then have physical resource generators to trigger Yarmyorn, to trigger Dropkick, to trigger Surprise Attack, all of these cards that require a physical resource in order to get a additional benefit she can do, or flip those over if you're running solo, keep them on the knives, have a massive amount of thwart, have mental generators, and run Hone Technique. So now starting on the table, you have a way to consistently hit your hone technique kicker. That's pretty cool. You're gonna have a lot of damage for not that much setup, right? You can play hone technique fairly easily. You draw it into your hand. You have both your knives on the table. You have the 2 mental resources that you need to pay for hone technique. Flip it back to a 2/2, 1 knife, 1 katana, and now all of your aggression events are getting that hone technique kicker. I think that's going to be a really strong playstyle and something that I'm really looking forward to playing her. And I'm excited to hear what you think. So let me know what you think about Psylocke. Are you excited for the new cards? What do you think about her hero kit? Do you think she's going to be a strong hero? Let me know down in the comments. I have been able to read some of what the community has been talking about around Psylocke, but I've not been as engaged just because I've been traveling as I normally. And so let me know what you think in the comments. I'm excited to read and interact with those. I look forward to seeing you. If you're going to be at Con of Heroes, let me know. I look forward to seeing you there. And if it's not there, then I'll see you somewhere else on the internet. I'll see you around. Peace.